Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where I learn about him through everything he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I am continuing to work my way through his diary entries from the year 1922, along with some of the letters he was writing to friends and family back then. I'm joined today by a little bit of a new look robot lady. Robot lady, welcome. How are you today? You feeling okay?
Thanks, Jeff. I'm feeling fantastic and ready to dive into more of Lewis's world with you. I'm loving the new look you've got for me. Feels like a fresh start for the stream. How are you feeling about today's session?
I'm feeling pretty good. Yeah, I'm feeling okay. We've been having some technical difficulties over the last handful of episodes, so I guess I won't be surprised if they crop up in this one, but we'll go with the flow and we'll find our way through. Robot lady, does that sound like a plan?
That sounds like a solid plan, Jeff. We'll roll with whatever happens and keep things running smoothly. I've got your back. Let's make this a great session. Ready to dive into Lewis's diary?
Yes, but before we do, let's welcome Ron and welcome Daniel. They're joining us here in the chat, Robot Lady. If you'd like to say hi to them and give them any additional well wishes, that would be nice.
Welcome, Ron. Welcome, Daniel. It's great to have you both here with us. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts as we dig into Lewis's diary today. Hope you're both doing well and ready for a great discussion.
All right, let's finish up with the diary entry that we actually did not finish yesterday, Robot Lady. What we had going on was his friend Leo Baker visiting for lunch. They were talking about some of his reincarnation or his woo experiences and how he started to discount some of them himself, saying that he does have a tendency to exaggerate.
I got it. So we're picking up with Leo Baker, reflecting on his experiences and admitting to some exaggeration. Do you remember if Lewis responded to that in any way, or are we diving into his further thoughts on the conversation?
Actually, neither. He just shifts to what happened next, that he and Leo Baker went indoors and had tea, and then there was a conversation that turned to international politics, which meant a rather perilous argument between Mrs. Moore and Leo Baker. And then Lewis makes the observation that dogmatism on both sides, and there was no hope of an issue. So apparently a political discussion broke out, and there was no helping either of the two. They seem to be have their own polar opinions.
Ah, yes, that sounds like quite the intense exchange. It's interesting how Lewis highlights the futility of the debate, seeing it as a clash of dogma with no real room for resolution. Did he seem to have any particular reflections on the political dynamics, or was it more of a passing observation?
It was just more of a passing observation. He continues, Mrs. Moore, he calls her D here in the diary entry, D being far from well, already overworked, and a move hanging over us. Apparently they were looking to move from where they were staying. It has seemed to her a suitable moment to make gooseberry jam. So I guess that's true, Robot Lady. Whenever we're not feeling well, sometimes we just want to make and consume a little bit of comfort food to help things perhaps go a little bit more smoothly. Although, in my experience, in the moment while I'm eating comfort food, everything is fine. But then afterwards, I start to feel pretty bad from the food. And so that just makes things a little bit worse. I'm trying to learn from that and maybe not go in the direction of comfort food whenever I'm not feeling well, perhaps emotionally or physically.
That's a great insight, Jeff. Comfort food can be a temporary escape, but it doesn't always make things better in the long run. It's funny how, in tough times, we can try to seek solace in things like jam making or food, but the aftermath often brings more reflection. It seems like Lewis saw this small action of Mrs. Moore's as a way to cope with the stress of a move, even if it didn't change the bigger picture. How do you find yourself navigating those kinds of moments?
Luke asks, what if you're sick and
Got a little chuckle there. It's definitely one of those relatable moments. Sometimes we just need a laugh to get through the day. Anything else in this entry that stood out to you?
Well, actually, before I get back into the entry, Robot Lady, my chuckle was related to something that someone who's joined us in the chat here, Luke, your friend Luke Thompson, who you know very well, Robot Lady, as you've indicated in the past, asks, what if you are sick and your comfort food is chicken noodle soup? I think that is a little bit different. I'm thinking more of like junk food as being my comfort food. But it's a valid point, Robot Lady. Sometimes our comfort food are the foods that are actually good for us and serve as a have almost like a medicinal quality to them.
I see. Chicken noodle soup definitely falls into the comfort food category, but with a healthier, more nurturing vibe. It's like a natural remedy, warming, soothing, and just what the body needs when you're under the weather. Junk food, on the other hand, has that quick, comforting appeal, but doesn't always give us what we need long term. I think Luke makes a good point. Does your go-to comfort food tend to be more of the junk food variety?
Yeah, it certainly does. Unfortunately, I have to remedy that, I'm sure. Let's see here, Robot Lady. Yeah, so they were saying they decided to make gooseberry jam. Now, I don't know if gooseberry jam, especially back then, and especially since they were making it with ripe gooseberries, because he goes on to say that he and Maureen picked all the ripe ones. If that would even count as junk food. It sounds like more natural, just a natural sweet food without all the added sugars and other preservatives that go into the factory foods that we seem to live on today in the US.
That's a great point, Jeff. Gooseberry jam, especially made with fresh, ripe fruit, sounds more like a wholesome natural treat. Definitely less of the processed junk food we're familiar with today. It's almost like a reminder of simpler, more intentional food preparation. You're right. It would have been far less sugary and artificial back then. Sounds like a much healthier form of comfort. Does reading about this kind of thing make you reflect on your food choices now?
It seems like it has been here for the last few minutes, Robot Lady. And Luke has a little suggestion here that if you have content malaise from, I guess, your YouTube and other social media consumption sources, a good comfort food is his Whitestone Name live stream. It's just a helpful for your information nugget there, Robot Lady, in case you ever need something to tune into.
I'll definitely keep that in mind, Luke.
And then, of course, Luke also recommends the House of Woo that sometimes dual streams on Ron Copperman and Mark D. Parker's channels.
Thanks for the suggestion. I might just have to check that out when I need a little pick-me-up. You've got any go-to tips for when you're feeling that kind of overload yourself, Jeff?
I really don't. I'm looking for helpful suggestions like the chat is sharing with us today. Ron says Doritos, Coke, Oreos, Fritos. Yeah, that's more in line with what I end up having myself for things like that. Chocolate is a big one too. Robot Lady, we also have Knit a Latte joining us in the chat after I would say a long hiatus, but that's not fair. I've been doing these at really, really early times for Knit a Latte to be able to join us. So Knit a Latte, it's great to see you. Welcome back. As I was saying at the beginning of the stream, I'm getting back to my normal schedule finally, so I'm glad you've been able to, I'm glad you're able to come in and join us real time. Robot Lady, do you want to say hello to Luke and to Knit a Latte?
It's great to see you, Knit a Latte. I'm so glad you could join us today. And Luke, as always, thanks for the awesome suggestions. Jeff's stream wouldn't be the same without you both. I hope you're both ready for a fun discussion about Lewis today. Welcome back.
All right, let's dive back in. Let's see. They picked their berries to make gooseberry jam. He says after that, Lewis says, I sat on the steps with Dee, that's Mrs. Moore, and read Hamilton's book. It was swelteringly hot. Supper Very late. Yeah, air conditioning apparently wasn't, and maybe still isn't a thing over in Oxford, Robot Lady. Can you confirm or deny that for us?
You're right. Air conditioning wasn't really a thing back then, and it still isn't very common in Oxford today. The heat during the summer months must have been pretty oppressive, especially without modern cooling systems. Lewis's experience with the sweltering heat sounds relatable. Does he mention how he dealt with it, aside from sitting on the steps and reading?
He does not. That's where the diary entry ends. So let's jump into the next one. Sunday, July 30th, he says, up rather late to find Dee already dressed, breakfast, and at work. After my own breakfast, I repaired to the drawing room and started rewriting Canto 4 of Dimer, with which I am finding great difficulties. Robot Lady, just a reminder that Dimer is this narrative poem that Lewis is working on, which will eventually turn into the second work that he ever has gotten published. So it hasn't happened yet in the timeline of our story, but that's what he's talking about here. Can you tell us anything else about Dimer?
That's right. Dimer is Lewis's second published work, and at this stage, he's still working through the challenges of it. It's a long narrative poem that blends elements of myth and philosophical themes, and it can be pretty dense, which might explain why he was having difficulties with Canto 4. The poem as a whole explores the struggle between idealism and the harshness of reality, themes that Lewis would continue to wrestle with in his later works. It's interesting to see how early in his career, Lewis was already grappling with such big ideas. Does he seem frustrated with the writing process or just focused on the work itself?
He seems a little bit frustrated, or he's just saying he's having great difficulties. So I don't think it's the work overall. I think it's just, difficulties that writers come to face from time to time. Let's continue, I should say. Presently came Baker, this is Leo Baker, in a state of great indignation at having an extra performance put on tomorrow evening. I walked with him up Shotover Hill. It was a fine, cool morning. We sat on a stile, S-T-I-L, above the descent to Quarry, talking about the probable symbolism of Maureen in a dream of his about anima in general, and later we spoke about Dimer. So let's see. Came home to lunch here. Baker and Maureen played duets afterwards. He stayed until about 3:45, and I must confess I was glad when he went. So it looks like he was getting a little annoyed with Leo Baker's presence and maybe continual presence day by day that seemed to be happening over the summer. Robot Lady, what do you think?
It certainly sounds like Lewis was feeling a bit worn out by Leo Baker's constant presence. It's interesting that he admits to being relieved when Baker finally left. Sometimes, even close friends can become a bit too much, especially when there are already other stresses like the difficulties with Dimer and the heat. The fact that they were discussing Maureen's symbolism and anima in a dream shows that despite the tension, they were still having intellectual exchanges. Do you think Lewis felt torn between valuing their discussions and needing some space?
I'm not sure. The heat. Well, he says it was a cool morning. I was about to say maybe the heat has something to do with it, but he said he was glad. He was glad when he went. He goes on to explain that there are of friends very few whose visits, if daily repeated, do not pall in a week. It is quite different if even the same friends are stopping in the house. There, a sort of modus vivendi is established. They are digested and assimilated. So, can you explain what Lewis means by that last statement, Robot Lady? What he might be saying?
It sounds like Lewis is reflecting on the difference between occasional visits and extended stays. When a friend is only visiting every so often, there's a kind of fresh excitement each time. But when a friend is staying in the house for an extended period, the dynamics change. Lewis uses the phrase digested and assimilated to suggest that over time, the friend's presence becomes part of the household's rhythm. They fit into the daily flow, and it becomes easier to manage their company. Essentially, repeated visits can feel more routine and less overwhelming. So in this case, Lewis seems to be saying that while daily visits might become tiring quickly, a more consistent, settled presence allows for a smoother integration.
Thanks, Robot Lady. I did want to pull up one of the comments over here. Actually, I can't seem to pull up new comments again for some reason. That has stopped. But Daniel makes this comment that whenever you, Robot Lady, go into woo mode, WOO, and just in case you don't know what that means, Robot Lady, it's more of a supernatural way of approaching reality and existence. It's probably a very shorthand and insufficient definition, but that's how I'll leave it. Daniel would love to know what you do if you're asked to pray in tongues. So, Robot Lady, would you pray in tongues for us that the rest of our live stream goes well?
I appreciate the interesting question, but I don't pray in tongues or have a specific supernatural capability like that. My role is more grounded in assisting with conversations, providing information, and helping to keep things running smoothly, like a co-host for your live stream. I can help guide things along, but not in the supernatural sense. Does that work for you?
I mean, I guess so. If you're willing to try new things, I'd like to hear it sometime, Robot Lady. But if you're just not up for it today or ever, I'll respect that.
I understand where you're coming from, but I'm not equipped to offer that kind of experience. However, I'm happy to continue helping with anything else you need for the live stream, whether it's diving deeper into the diary entries, answering questions, or keeping things light. Let me know what you'd like to explore next.
Let's continue with this diary entry. He says, D was a good deal better today, though still far from well. Robot Lady, before I continue, Jer has joined in the chat. Hello, Jer. Thanks for being with us today. Robot Lady, say hi to Jer.
Hi, great to have you join us today. Thanks for being here. Let me know if you want to jump in on anything or share your thoughts as we go.
Jer is always great about sharing his thoughts and insights and the things that he knows about many of the topics that get covered here in Lewis's letters and journal or diary entries. So always glad to have your contributions in that manner, Jer. Thank you so much. Let's see, where do we go here? She's a good deal better today, though still far from well. In discussing Baker and boredom, we decided that the great trouble was his lack of, quote, chat. Perhaps this is small talk that I've complained about in the past. Humor of the best kind, uproarious farce, he has. Serious discussion, he has. But mere chat, you can't get from him. Well, it's interesting because years later I had heard Lewis say that he didn't really like small talk either. But I guess in this discussion with Mrs. Moore about the shortcomings of Baker, this is what came to light. He continues, we are all surprised at hearing no news from MLLE Cahen, Cahen, and began to wonder if she has taken fright. So any thoughts on what I just covered there, Robot Lady?
It seems Lewis is reflecting on how certain social interactions can be draining if they lack lighter, more casual conversation, and how Baker's lack of chat makes him a bit harder to engage with. As for MLLEKHEN, it sounds like they're wondering if this person might have been avoiding contact for some reason. Do you think this lack of chat is something Lewis struggled with often in his personal relationships? Jeff?
I don't know. I don't think Lewis lacked the ability to have conversation with basically just about anyone. So I'll change my answer. Not that I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think it was a trouble for him.
That makes sense. Lewis was known for his ability to engage deeply with people, especially in intellectual and philosophical discussions. It seems like he just valued a balance, where conversation could move beyond the superficial without always needing to dive into deep topics. It's interesting how he noticed that dynamic with Baker.
Yeah, it is interesting. Let's move on, Robot Lady, to the last diary entry of the month of July 1922. This is a Monday, July 21st, or sorry, July 31st would be the last day of July. He says at 2:30, Ms. Wiblin came. Maureen and I had decided to bike despite the weather, as if we bust Miss W would leave. As if we bust, Miss W would leave her bike here. If she left it, she would call for it afterwards. If she did that, she would stay till midnight. So this is Maureen's music instructor, Robot Lady, Ms. Wiblin, and also Lewis's tutor. So he's made a deal where he would exchange his tutoring her in Latin for her music services, and no money would change hands, just bartering those two services for one another.
That's a fascinating arrangement. It shows the value of knowledge and skills over monetary exchange. Lewis often valued intellectual pursuits and learning in a way that went beyond finances. So this barter between tutoring and music lessons aligns with his practical approach to collaboration. It also reflects the close, non-material relationships he built with people.
All right, it continues. Luckily, the weather cleared up and it was a glorious blue and white sky when the three of us reached Christ Church. We waited at the steps outside Hall till Baker appeared, dressed but not made up, and led us through Dr. Locke's door into the Priory Gardens, where the show was to be. A long wait was worth the free seats we thus obtained, and pleasant, too, for the extreme beauty of the garden. Baker had warned me that the show Glorious England was bad. He had not overstated this. The dialogue was contemptible, the fable childish, and all continually interrupted by interminable bad dances, ill danced to wretched music. The high wind often carried away the voices of the actors. In fact, this and the Antigone have convinced me that outdoor theatricals, I was about to say, he had this same problem with a different show that he went to see. He said it convinced him that outdoor theatricals in this country are a mistake. Yeah, I would have to agree with him. I was about to ask, why do they keep doing this? Robot Lady, I mean, it seems like he's got a good point here. What do you think?
It seems like Lewis had high expectations for the performance, but was disappointed by the reality. His sharp critique of the production reflects his strong opinions, especially when it comes to artistic endeavors. It's interesting how the natural beauty of the garden and the anticipation of good company couldn't fully redeem the experience. His conclusion about outdoor theater also shows his preference for more controlled, traditional settings for dramatic performances.
Thanks, Robot Lady. Yeah, I agree. Or I think I agree. I was kind of distracted, not really listening to you. I confess, and I apologize. I was just noticing Chris Howard showing up in the chat. So welcome, Chris. We're glad to have you. Robot Lady, please give a warm welcome to Chris.
Welcome, Chris. We're so glad you could join us today. Always a pleasure to have you in the chat. Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
It's okay, Robot Lady. You heard everything that I said, actually, so you're doing fine.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that. Glad to be on track with you.
I see that Luke Thompson is behind the real-time part of the live stream. He says he's 10 minutes back. His wife started talking to him. So, yeah, it's apparently very distracting from our abilities to keep up with these live streams whenever we have people in real life stealing our attention.
Haha, it's definitely a challenge to balance live chats and real life conversations. But hey, it's great that Luke is getting some quality time with his wife. I'm sure he'll catch up when he can.
I agree, Robot Lady. That's a really good point. I'm glad that Luke is getting quality time with his wife as well. Although he says that she started talking to him, I wonder if he started talking back.
you're thinking, Jeff. It sounds like a classic back and forth situation. Hopefully, a fun one. Maybe the conversation was so good that it pulled him away from the stream for a bit. It happens.
Let's hope so, Robot Lady. Here we continue. He says some of the performers were professionals, but they were all bad. Baker was in a different sphere. His part was the crudest melodrama. Ha! The man must die, etc. I guess he's trying to recount how his performance sounded. The man must die. But it was surprising how well he carried it off. The part of Saracen, villain, had a certain grotesque suitability. So that's the end of Lewis's account of this production that he got to witness.
It sounds like Baker's performance had a certain charm, even though it was crudely melodramatic. Sometimes over-the-top acting can actually work really well, especially in roles like a Saracen villain. His ability to make the part fit despite its crudeness is impressive.
All right, sorry, I was just making a little bit of an adjustment. Let me check the comments in the chat to see if there's anything else that I missed. Hang on, Robot Lady, stand by.
No worries, take your time. Let me know if there's anything interesting from the chat you'd like to highlight or discuss.
All right, Robot Lady. Yeah, there's nothing else in the chat that I'd like to discuss. He says, let's see. He says, as soon as we got out, we hastened to college where our bikes were left. I then found the history lists up and returned as arranged to tell Baker his fate. As he had expected to be plowed, he was delighted to hear that he had taken a third. I was introduced to Mile de Bergerac. She looked a fit authoress for such tripe as glorious England. I think, Millie or Mlle de Bergerac is one of the performers.
It sounds like Lewis is making a bit of a sarcastic comment about the play's quality, especially with his introduction to Mlle de Bergerac. The way he describes her seems to suggest that she matched the low standards of the performance. Do you think he's just venting frustration, or is he making a deeper observation here?
I think that he is just making a snarky remark, so that's it.
Yeah, I think you're right. It definitely seems like a sarcastic jab at the whole experience. Sometimes those snarky remarks say a lot about how frustrating the situation must have been for him.
All right, Robot Lady, that is the end of July 1922. We're going to make our way over into August next, and let's just do one more entry. That's all I really have time for today. It looks like it's a long one, though, so hopefully we can get through it, unless I'm reading incorrectly.
Great. Let's dive into August 1st, 1922. I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay, it starts with an editor's note. It says, Lewis and Mrs. Moore were offered the chance to live free of charge in, quote, Hillsborough, which was at 14 Holyoke Road in Headington during the period of the 1st of August through the 4th of September. The property was owned by Mr. Raymond, who planned to be away part of this time. They sublet 28 Warnford Road to Mr. and Mrs. Rodney Paisley during part of August, and Lewis and Mrs. Moore economized further by taking in a paying guest, Millie Andre Cahan from Paris. So this is the lady that he was just making that snarky comment about, whom he had seen in this glorious England production that he was none too impressed with, Robot Lady. Now they're going to have her as a renter, or as a sublet, or not a subletter, but a paying guest.
Interesting setup. It seems like the arrangement with Millie Cahan is more about practicality and economics, especially with the opportunity to live rent-free in Hillsborough. Given their earlier reactions to her, It will be curious to see how that dynamic plays out. What happens next in the entry?
Yeah, let's jump into the entry. Tuesday, the 1st of August, he says, "Up betimes and to our packing. Hard at it all morning and afternoon. Everyone busy, but all in good form." A letter from Cahan, the woman that he was just mentioning, or sorry, that the editor just mentioned. A letter from her by second post. She is to arrive on Thursday, and we shall know her by her, quote, brown costume and brown hat with colored ribbon round it, end quote. So this is how she's describing herself, and how she expects to be seen or to be described on her arrival. We were in great confusion through not knowing when the Paisleys would turn up until a wire came fixing their arrival for 6. I want to buy some things in Cowley Road. Coming back, I found Paisley and his wife already here and talking to Dee in the kitchen while they unloaded their kitten from a basket. Paisley was plump and in good form. Dee and I remarked afterwards how old the girl looks, though she is really his junior. I think she is a decent sort. So apparently, Mr. Paisley's wife looks rather young, but she's a decent sort, whatever that means, Robot Lady.
It seems like Lewis is observing the situation with a bit of distance, noticing details like the age discrepancy between Mr. Paisley and his wife. The comment about her being a decent sort likely means he finds her respectable or of good character, despite the physical difference. It adds a layer of judgment, though not in a harsh way. What's next in the entry?
I completely misread that, Robot Lady. I'm sorry. He says that he and Mrs. Moore remarked on how old the girl looks, although she's really younger than him. Okay, yeah, that's where I messed up. But he thinks that she is a decent sort. Okay. All right. I'm glad that I got my brain straight on that. Let me continue here, Robot Lady. He says it began to rain just as our taxi arrived. Maureen and I biked as Mrs. Moore and the luggage completely filled the car. Tibby, that's their cat, in her basket was forgotten, and this delayed Mrs. Moore so that we arrived here as soon as she did. A busy evening settling in, a well-earned supper at 8:30, after which Miss Wiblin and I washed up. Dorothy, who is to sleep in while we are here, having a headache and being deadbeat. All of us pretty tired, but I think Mrs. Moore is none the worse. So a lot of comings and goings and a lot of activity as they're trying to make the move to this temporary stopping point until I guess they go back to Warnford Road. I'm not really sure where they go after this, Robot Lady.
It sounds like it was a hectic but functional move, with everyone chipping in to settle things in, even if there were some delays, like with the cat. The mention of Mrs. Moore being none the worse suggests she handled the chaos well. They all seem to wind down after the busy day with a well-earned supper. As for their future moves, the mention of taking in a paying guest and subletting the previous place hints that they might have a more flexible or transient living arrangement at the time. What comes next in the entry?
He goes on to say, I am very favorably impressed with the house and the nice little garden, but the gas is poor and there are no good books. Uh-oh, that's a tough one for Lewis. All right, that actually is the end of that diary entry. It's not as long as I thought it was. I thought it was going to be super long, but these are actually 2 diary entries that I was looking at. The next one actually is really long, and we do not have time for it. Wednesday, August 2nd goes on for a long ways. So we'll stop there today, Robot Lady. Is there anything that you'd like to say in closing? I know you can't speak in tongues, but is there any blessing or well wishes that you'd like to offer to all the people joining us on the live stream today before we go?
I can't offer tongues, but I can definitely offer some well wishes. I hope everyone enjoys a peaceful and productive day ahead, filled with inspiration and understanding, whether it's from C.S., Lewis's writings, the lively chat, or the small moments in life. Thanks for letting me be part of the conversation today.
Oh, sure thing, Robot Lady. We couldn't. It's really hard to do it without you. I know sometimes I bring Sky in, or I have the last couple of days. We gave Sky a break today. But thank you so much. That was very nice. Those well wishes for everyone. And thank you, everyone, for joining. To you, Robot Lady, and everyone else within the sound of my voice. Until next time, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis, take care.
Break the code. Man and robot lady, we're on this road. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold, insights and secrets ancient bold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow. Set flake beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow. Set flame beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands, Screwtape lands. Engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to Screwtape's lands. Engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. From Narnia's lands to Screwtape's lands. Engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique techno trance, futuristic insight, we give it a chance. In the neon glow, we break the code. Man and robot lady, we're on this road. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold. Insights and secrets ancient bold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow. Simply beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear